next up, we're ready to go with the next one, ladies and gentlemen. We have Eyepoint Pharmaceuticals. It is ticker EYPT, and we have the CEO, who is about to come on here in a second, Nancy Lurker. Nancy,
hi.
Are you out there? Hi.
Can you see me? Because I'm sharing my screen, but I can't see you guys. So
I can see you. You look great. You sound great. I'll let you have the floor.
Okay, great. Can you just remind me just quickly how much time I have to? Because I want to try to stay on time here.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So you're gonna have till if you want to do some questions, probably about 12:20.
All right, very good. Okay. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you, and I'm very excited to talk with you about Eyepoint Pharmaceuticals. We are an ophthalmology company, and let's see, how come this, there we go. We are public, so go to our website for all of our forward-looking statements. So who are we? We have a very exciting drug delivery technology. So we are a technology-based company. We've got a very compelling pipeline that's focused on retinal diseases. That's diseases in the back of the eye. Our lead compound or drug is EYP-1901. That is our most exciting asset in our pipeline that we have today. It's a potential twice a year anti-VEGF, and I'll explain some of these terms to your listeners, and that's called it's a tyrosine kinase inhibitor. There are different types of anti-VEGF. This one is a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, and it's for the treatment of wet macular edema. We're in a phase 1 trial, and I'll talk a little bit about wet AMD in a moment as well. We also have YUTIQ 50, which is another potential twice yearly treatment for posterior uveitis, a very serious inflammation of the back of the eye. It's actually the leading cause of blindness, and unfortunately it strikes people in their middle age, and it's lifelong. And then we continue to look at other molecules that we can put in our fantastic drug delivery technology, Durasert. Now, why is Durasert so great? Because we've used it in 4 FDA approved drugs. And by the way, it's very hard to find and be able to deliver drugs into the eye safely. Why is that? It's a very small space, as you can imagine. It's a very complex organ. And so to be able to deliver drugs to the eye is hard work. But the other thing about Durasert is that it has what we call sustained zero-order kinetics. What does that mean? That means that it actually releases out a tiny microdose every single day consistently over however long we want that to last. And it's, again, local delivery in the eye. Most drugs deliver what's called first-order kinetics. They give a big burst, and then it drops down, and then you got to give another big burst when you re-inject, and then it drops down. That's typically not very healthy for the eye. Zero-order kinetics provides this very constant, stable release of therapeutics into the eye over however long we want. And we also, because of these 4 FDA-approved products, it's been administered now using this Durasert technology to over 70,000 patients across our 4 drugs. And we continue to have a remarkable safety profile. Now, Eyepoint, of those 4 drugs, we actually are commercializing 2 products. One is YUTIQ, and YUTIQ is, as I mentioned, is a 3-year implant for posterior uveitis. In the pipeline is YUTIQ 50, which is in every 6 months. We just want a different dosing option for physicians. And then we also have DEXYCU. DEXYCU is for the prevention of inflammation following eye surgery. We did announce very solid Q2 product revenues in the second quarter, particularly as the COVID-19 restrictions eased up. All right, so off to the right here is a picture of Durasert. You can see it just slowly dissolves into the eye in the back. And by the way, it's administered with a very simple in-office administration. No surgeries, nothing complicated. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the various options and why we're so excited about this. So you can see on the left here, that's actually a picture of YUTIQ. That's our 3 years. So believe it or not, that little tiny implant lasts in the eye for 3 years. And it just keeps eluting its drug. In this case, for YUTIQ, it's a steroid, consistently over 3 years. It's really beautiful technology. And as I mentioned, we've got 4 FDA-approved products. 3 of them actually were out-licensed, and one of them we commercialize ourselves. That's YUTIQ. It's a single in-office. Intravitreal means in the white part, the back part of the eye. and provides this continuous stable release. The 4 approved drugs are YUTIQ, which we commercialize, Iluvien, which was out-licensed to our partner Alimera. They commercialize this for diabetic macular edema. Retisert, which has been on the market since 2005, that's commercialized by Bosch, and that is also for uveitis, and then no longer available on the market, but the first real true eye drug delivery technology that we invented, Vitrasert, and that was for a very serious eye disease associated with AIDS and HIV. But because of the phenomenal treatment of those diseases, it's really no longer needed. So we've had 4 drugs on the market using this really fantastic drug delivery technology. And then, as I mentioned, in the pipeline is EYP-1901, which I'm going to spend more time on, YUTIQ 50, which is our once every 6-month drug for posterior segment uveitis, and then we have a few other undisclosed preclinical programs. So let's talk about how we are building on this really exciting and proven ocular drug delivery platform. So in our phase 1, we have EYP-1901. That's a bioerodible form of Durasert with this anti-VEGF, and again, I will explain that in a moment, called vorolanib. We are currently in the clinic for wet AMD, an extremely large disease, mostly of people who get older. And then we plan, if we have positive results, we plan to go into the clinic for other retinal eye diseases with the same drug and same active ingredient, vorolanib, for diabetic retinopathy and retinal vein occlusion. Now, all 3 of these diseases are large and growing, and they typically strike people when they're probably sometime, typically I'd say in the 60s and older. They're progressive, they cause blindness, and they're lifelong. There's no cure. And I'll talk a little bit more about how they're treated today and why we're excited about 1901. And then in really phase 3 is our YUTIQ 50, because it's going to get filed as a supplemental new drug application to our YUTIQ 3-year, which is already approved. We just have to do a small 60-patient study. We'll file that as an sNDA, and it should get approval within 10 months, assuming the data is efficacious and safe. All right, let's talk now about why we are so excited about 1901. Our goal is to really transform the treatment of these devastating eye diseases that unfortunately affect millions and millions of patients in the US and in Europe and other countries. So the need is that these wet AMD patients often lose their vision despite very efficacious anti-VEGF therapies. Why is that? Because the current treatments today require that you get frequent, every month or every other month, injections into the back of your eye. And it's not so much the eye injections. I mean, nobody wants to get their eye poked with a needle every month or every other month for the rest of your life, but it's also having to get to the doctor's office for the rest of your life. So that often involves caregivers, and it's hard. So we know from the data that these patients keep losing their eyesight. And that's where 1901 comes in. It's a potential twice yearly in-office injection using our beautiful Durasert technology that slowly releases the anti-VEGF vorolanib so that these patients don't have to come in as often. All right, now this is some retrospective, we call it backward looking, is all the claims over several years. It was a large study done by an institution looking at, you can see here, over 3,350 ranibizumab, which is called Lucentis, or 4,300 aflibercept, which is Eylea. You may recognize those names. Those are blockbuster drugs treating this disease. And you can see that over time, despite getting these really effective anti-VEGF treatments, their vision keeps going down. And again, it's because these patients just can't come in every month or every other month for the rest of their lives. So the solution is 1901. Bioerodible formulation of Durasert using this very potent vorolanib for an anti-VEGF. It is specifically called a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, which means it's a small molecule. It was studied, and one of the reasons we like vorolanib, it was actually studied as oral therapy for wet AMD through human trials, phase 2, and had a very strong clinical signal in treating wet AMD with no significant ocular side effects. However, like a lot of orally delivered TKIs, it did have hepatotoxicity. And so as a result, they stopped the study. But delivered directly into the eye, they actually, and we have announced already, we have seen no significant side effects delivered directly to the eye. It does block all three, we call them isoforms of VEGF. And let me just quickly explain what is VEGF. It actually stands for vascular endothelial growth factor, and there's receptors. And if you just show right here, here's the receptors in the eye. And today what happens is there's a number of these VEGFs, and they float around in the eye, actually throughout the body. And what they do is they cause a growth of microcapillaries from your blood vessels. Now, generally you need that because microcapillaries age and you need to keep growing new, tiny, tiny blood vessels. Where it runs amok is in tumor cells, cancer, because they put out microcapillaries to feed the tumor. So these drugs are used often. In fact, they're a standard of care in treating many cancers because it shuts off the blood supply. If you cut off the VEGF, they can't get the enzyme that they need to grow those microcapillaries and feed the tumor. It's not too dissimilar from in the eye. These eye diseases like wet AMD, they tend to have a proliferation of these microcapillaries. It feeds on the VEGF and grows the microcapillaries, which leak tiny blood cells, fluid, and that's what clouds the vision and causes you to lose your eyesight. Now, the current therapies actually act like scavengers of that VEGF in the eye. They gobble it up. The problem is they quickly lose their potency, they get washed out of the eye, and then you end up with the VEGF just getting produced again by these receptors which are inside the eye. What vorolanib does is we go in and vorolanib blocks the receptor, so the receptor actually stops producing the VEGF. And so we believe we actually have a better potential mechanism of action than the old large molecules on the market today. We have to prove that out, but we'll see. So we block a broader range of VEGF than the current large molecule VEGF, scavenger VEGF molecules. And so we remain excited about our potential here. This gets a little into chemistry, but you want to make sure that when you block the receptor, your binding affinity is very tight. And sunitinib is a well-known tyrosine kinase inhibitor, an anti-VEGF, and we have the same potency as sunitinib, which is a good thing. This basically says we have very good potency binding those receptors and causing them to shut down producing VEGF. Now, if you look at the oral studies that were done, this is the activity I mentioned. This is delivered as a pill, and what you see is in the eye, you want to make sure that these patients are being able to maintain their vision and that they're not losing vision. And so if they do lose their vision, they're going to get a rescue injection of the current standard of care. And so you can see on the patients who had placebo, depending on the dose, you can see that you saw a placebo had 9 patients, had to have the 33 patients in the placebo group had to have 9 rescue injections. And again, this was blinded. You can see as the dose went up of vorolanib, the number of median rescue injections went down. So that meant the drug was working because you were maintaining your vision, you weren't increasing your fluid, and as a result, you didn't need these rescue injections. So this basically said the drug's working in the eye. So based on that, we actually in-licensed the drug and we put it into our Duracert technology so we could deliver it locally. In the animal model, we saw no toxicity. And so as a result from that, we moved into our phase 1 study. So our phase 1 study is ongoing. It's 17 patients. After the patients get enrolled, they do get 1 injection of an anti-VEGF. In this case, we used Eylea, which is the leading anti-VEGF on the market today. And then it's open label, meaning that it's not blinded. And we had 3 doses we're testing: a low dose, 0.4 milligrams, a mid dose, which is 2 milligrams, and a high dose, which is 3 milligrams. We plan to read out the data at 6 months efficacy, and we're going to be looking, obviously, safety. Safety is always the criteria for your phase 1 studies. And then we'll also look at vision. Was it able to be maintained? These were all prior treated patients, by the way. They're not naive, meaning they've never been treated before. So you want to maintain the vision that they were getting on the current anti-VEGF therapies, and you don't want it to deteriorate. And so we'll be looking at that as well as an increase in fluids and whether or not they got rescue medications. Now, the good news is our enrollment we announced was complete May 25th. have been accepted for a late breaker presentation at the November 13th, that's this year, American Association of Ophthalmology meeting, and we're very excited to be able to announce these results to you. Now, we also have announced positive 30-day safety results across all dose cohorts, and generally with these locally delivered back of the eye diseases, typically you see side effects emerge within 30 days. Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases. So it's a good signal that at 30 days, we had no significant safety results. We also announced for the low dose cohort safety out through 6 months. And again, we showed no significant ocular safety issues, whether they were ocular, local to the eye, or systemic. No intraocular inflammation, a very common side effect you see with a lot of drugs or implants delivered. No adverse events related to BCVA, that means reduction in vision. No elevation in eye pressure, which can lead to glaucoma. No events of endophthalmitis, which is a very blinding inflammation of the eye. Retinal detachment, that can also cause you to go blind, or migration of the implant into the anterior chamber. And by the way, one of our competitors, unfortunately, they had that problem of migration. They had little microspheres that burst everywhere, and they showed migration all over into the eye, and they had to shut the program down, unfortunately. But again, we've got a very safe track record with Durasert. And then, as I said, the three subjects in cohort 1 have already been followed for a minimum of 6 months with no reported SAEs. So we're quite excited about the upcoming event at AAO and are looking forward to sharing those important data with you. We do have $127 million in cash as of June 30th. We announced with our 2 products on the market, we had $8.7 million in net product revenues in the second quarter of this year, which was a 136% increase over the prior year. $15.5 million total in the first half of 2021, which is an 85% increase over last year. And we expect our cash to last us through the end of 2022, assuming that we do a phase 2b study in several of these indications. It'll last longer, obviously, if we don't do those studies. But we'll wait till we get the results out, and then we will be ready to go if the results are positive into these additional and very exciting clinical programs. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I just want to say that, this information that you're giving our audience, it's extremely humbling. Our audience is here today to get some investment ideas, but we got to remember that what we're doing here is, there's very serious treatments that need to be done for humans out there to give them relief. And, a company like Eyepoint certainly seems like they're seeking that. So just wanted to, commend you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it is important. It's something that really motivates a lot of our employees, knowing that.
I'm sure. A couple quick questions.
Sure.
A question that I had. Can the patient, after the Durasert is in the eyeball, can the patient feel the implant or the drug being delivered?
No, they can't. They can't feel it. They can't see it. It's so tiny that what it does, it falls. It's extremely small, and so it really falls to the bottom of we call it the vitreous, the bottom of the eye, and we've had no incidences of it. Wow. They certainly can't feel it. And second of all, I think out of the 70,000 patients, we might have had 1 or 2 who, when they lay down, like in bed, they might be able to see it, but nobody's upset that it bothers them. So yeah, it's really a remarkable drug.
And then a question from Frank in our chat. He's asking, can your device deliver larger molecules such as an antibody?
Yeah, very good question, Frank. And the answer, unfortunately, is no. We only can deliver these small molecules. So that's what we're looking at. We've got a number of interesting things. We just in-licensed a Tie2 activator. A Tie2 is another pathway that goes after these serious retinal diseases. Mm-hmm. So potentially what we could do is actually combine this Tie2 activator with our tyrosine kinase inhibitor, and you go after this disease with 2 mechanisms of action. But that Tie2 is a small molecule as well.
Gotcha. And the Durasert, any prospects that you can hint at for further partnering?
Well, as I said, so 2 things. One, we do expect we're going to go into diabetic retinopathy and retinal vein occlusion if the DAVIO, our phase 1 study on wet AMD, reports out positive. And then, as I mentioned, we'll get working right away on this TIE2 activator. And there are any number of partnerships we can make with our technology. We get calls all the time from companies who want to partner with us, and we continue to evaluate those. But I want to stress, as I tell my team, you know, our focus right now is on this fantastic opportunity we have right in front of us with EYP 901. So that's really where most of our focus is going to remain.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I want to wish you good luck at the beginning of November when you're going to be given that data readout.
Yep, appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
It was a pleasure having you today. Nancy Lurker, she's CEO of Eyepoint Pharmaceuticals. It's ticker EYPT on the NASDAQ. Again, thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot.